Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan Vincent Lancrin, and I work for the OECD Center for Educational Research and Innovation at the Directorate for Education and Skills at the OECD. And it's my great pleasure to moderate this webinar with Inge Molenaar, Axel Jean, and Donatella Solda, and which relates to our work on the digital transformation in education. So, with this webinar is very much following some work that we're doing in the Center for Educational Research and Innovation on smart data and digital technology, which actually led last year to the publication of the OECD Digital Education Outlook 2023, which basically looks at the soft and hard infrastructure that members provide to their school students, and also how they govern these different types of schools. And you can see here we have actually published also a companion which focuses on different countries. And one of the aspects of this work is actually the chapter on co-creation that was also by Inge Molenaar, who is one of our panelists today, and Peter Sligers, on actually how multi-stakeholder collaboration and how to incentivize collaboration with end users and multiple stakeholders in the design of AI tools in education. So, Inge will talk about it, but the very idea is how we overcome silos and make sure that a lot of these digital resources and tools are actually useful to teachers, educators, and policymakers, and actually how we can also have a developed, a shared understanding of these AI concept of the nature of innovation, and basically how we can make all these tools more usable and more useful for all the different people. So this seems to be a pretty easy idea, and that's also one of the recommendation that we have made in the guideline that we have produced with Education International, the Global Federation of Teacher Unions, where we also try to foster this co-creation of AI tools, and trying to acknowledge that sometimes technology may seem to be inappropriate or in advance to what the actual needs, or even irrelevant to some of the stakeholders, because actually sometimes of a lack of involvement of the end users. At the same time, there has to be collaboration because teachers cannot develop these tools. The edtech companies, the universities have the competencies that are not necessarily in the hands of, the schools and the teachers. And so there has to be actually a positive dialogue between all these different parties if we want to have relevant tools. So we, calling for the funding of these types of programs, and we look for examples. At the same time, there are a few, but perhaps surprisingly, not as many as one would expect. And so today, what we're going to talk about is really how we can think of these user-centered AI education tools and resources, and what are the different ways of actually fostering this dialogue. So for that, we have three great speakers who will actually illustrate different models of co-creation. So Inge Molenaar, who is the director of the National Education Lab AI, NOLAI, in the Netherlands, and the professor of education and artificial intelligence at Radboud University. And Inge actually just had a chair and gave an inaugural lecture a few weeks ago that you can probably find still on the internet. So I encourage you to see it. I actually was very lucky to attend it when it was given, and that was a very interesting one. We have Axel Jean, who is the head of digital innovation and applied research at the Ministry of Education in France, part of the digital directorate of the ministry. And last but not least, Donatella Solda, who is the director of Future Education Modena in Italy. And the idea of having this panel is that, Inge is in a university, Axel in a ministry, Donatella in a non-governmental organization. And so, we have actually different ways of working on this shared agenda. And so that's basically what we are going to do now. So if you can join me, Donatella, Inge, and Axel. And so the way we're going to do that, we're going to start with short presentations of Inge, then Axel, and Donatella. And then we go into a discussion. And I would like to thank all of you for sending a lot of questions ahead of the seminar. So we're going to tackle some of them. There were actually really too many for us to take them all on board. What I can say that there was a lot also that was really on generative AI and AI in general, rather than co-creation of it, and which gave us a lot of food for thought for our future webinars as well. But I think that, we're going to take on board, so don't hesitate to put some of your questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them in the time that we have. And with no further ado, I will now give the floor to Inge for the first introductory remarks.
Hi, Inge, you're still currently on mute. Could you try and unmute yourself, please?
I will.
Perfect.
And I'll also try to start the presentation correctly. Here we are. I think we're all good now. Thank you, Stefan, for organizing this and the kind introduction and your kind words about my inaugural speech, which indeed is available online, and I will share with you in the link later in this session. As I said, I will talk a little bit about the example of the National AI in Education Lab. But before I do so, I'd like to go back a little bit to the chapter that Stefan just introduced. We wrote the chapter last year, highlighting the importance of collaboration between different actors to ensure that we use AI responsibly in education. Also for us at NOLI to get an idea of the other initiatives around the world that were doing similar efforts to actually co-design and co-create AI solutions together with schools, science, and companies. And it's critical to involve these three partners because the essence of AI in education is that it's a centralized, shared environment. And what we often see is that development of technology, and especially AI technology in education, is still focused at companies. And the voice of educators is therefore often not heard as much as it should. And therefore, within the National AI and Education Center, we really stress the importance of including the voices of educators in the design of artificial intelligence in education. We're focusing on K-12, so we're primarily focused on primary and secondary education, and especially for these sectors, it's really important to ensure that teachers and directors of schools are heard in the development. What we also know from our own scientific research and recent systematic reviews that we've been doing at NOLI is that we see that scientific research, our knowledge about learning and teaching, is only partially used in solutions of AI in education. In fact, we currently see that roughly about half of the AI solutions in education actually build on a theoretical understanding of learning. That's for the learner-faced solutions. If we look at teacher-faced solutions, it's even less. It's less than 1/3 of the solutions that actually incorporate our knowledge about teaching into the AI solutions that are being put forward. And that leaves us with a huge space to ensure that actually the solutions that we are using are in fact evidence-informed and evidence-based. And from a company perspective, collaborating together with educators and with scientists really helps them to ensure the validity of the solutions, but also there are quite a lot of struggles with implementation into schools and connecting into teacher and student practices. And those things can also be overcome in collaboration in the triangle. So in the chapter, we really stressed out that these interactions between these three elements are rare. It's hardly ever that programs are focused at the triangle collaboration, so really the triple helix innovation approaches. It's very important to have a common language to talk about AI in education. People in these different sectors have a different voice, a different vocabulary to talk about these elements. And even if we talk within science, it's often a transdisciplinary approach. And also there, you really need to be able to talk to each other. And if we looked at the labs around the world, we mostly see that they're focusing on either one or two of these elements. So either on business development, fundamental research to apply to application in education, or professional development. The integration of all three is really relatively uncommon. And that brings me to Nolai. In Nolai, we have an investment of 80 million from the Dutch government. It's coming from our national investment program. So this is a government-initiated program that is run by the Radboud University together with 3 other universities, school boards, and development companies. So we have the triangle represented both in our board as well as in the companies that we are, the partners that we collaborate with. Nolai has two main programs. We have our co-creation program, which is our development program. In that program, we work from the questions from schools and teachers. How do they want to use AI in education? We filter out those questions that are really valuable and meaningful. Then we connect in the scientific researchers to make sure that we work from a knowledge-based perspective. And we connect in companies that have similar propositions. And that together builds the triangle that is a co-creation project. And in co-creation projects, then new innovations are conceptualized, developed, and validated in a 3-year process. So that's the core of our development program. We currently have 19 co-creations up and running. We've been, Nolai has been around for 2 years now. So this is our second cohort starting, and we're working on our third cohort of co-creation projects. We will do roughly 70 different co-creation projects over the course of the 10 years that Nolai will be functioning in this space. Next to our co-creation program, we have our scientific program, which is an interdisciplinary program in which we connect scientists together in the development efforts. We do that with different teams, one from the learning sciences, really making sure that our knowledge about learning is integrated in this program, with a teaching and professionalization program, a focus group on AI, so really the AI experts on how you can apply AI in education, and of course an ethical group and a sustainable data group. So bringing together the different perspectives from both social sciences, philosophy, and computer science to make sure that we're reflecting on responsible use of education. And so our co-creation program, the development, together with our scientific program, is intertwined in the functioning of Nolai, making sure that these two programs enrich each other and together develop a thorough understanding of how we can use responsible AI in education. Vincent, do I have time for one example? Yep. So I said we have 19 co-creation projects up and running. I'll use this co-creation project about technical reading with automatic speech recognition as just an example of how the process works. We go into conversations with teachers and school boards, ask what are current situations that could be resolved with AI. And in Dutch is a transparent language, and measuring a technical reading is quite labor intensive. So children still take technical reading tests, which take about 15 minutes per child to be taken off and are therefore individual tested situations. And teachers indicated that they would really like to see a more concurrent overview of how technical reading is developing over time. Automated speech recognition gives us the ability to actually measure reading on an individual level concurrently during reading activities. And so in this co-creation project, we're combining this question from the teachers to actually be able to see that development of technical reading over time with scientific insights from both technical reading literature as well as automated speech recognition. Dutch is a very small language worldwide, and so automated speech recognition for Dutch is actually quite challenging, and especially with young children, because you don't know if it's actually a speaking error or a reading error that you're listening to. So those experts together with a company work on developing this new solution with the teachers. The concept has been designed already, and right now the teachers are going to work with the first prototype in the classrooms to see if that is actually functioning well. So we have the conceptual year in the beginning, then we have the development year in which teachers are iteratively using the development in order to see if it fits with their pedagogical needs, and consequently we'll go into a small a validation stage in which we're going to assess whether or not these solutions are in fact contributing to the goals that they were setting out to work with. So this technical reading with automatic speech recognition is one of the examples. We also have a co-creation project on supporting self-regulated learning, in which we help students to write essays and overcome the problem of generative AI, in which we see that teachers now are no longer looking at the outcome of the essay writing, but are much more interested in fact, the process. And by monitoring the process, we can give them a meaningful way to discuss with their students how that writing exercise is actually taking place, but also how students are in fact monitoring their own learning. And that's another example of one of our co-creation projects. So to wrap up and give you time for all those questions that you have out there, important tips and tricks from our experience is creating a common language among all these participants. At NoLi, we have teachers in residence that are teachers that teach for 4 days a week and come to the lab for 1 day a week. So there are constant integration with the educational practice. We have all these different interdisciplinary scientists. We have co-creation managers. And so there is a whole group of people together with the businesses that need to be able to speak a similar language. And that's what we're working on collaboratively. Collaboration is essential. You have to do this together. It's not cooperation, it's really collaboration. It's an ongoing design process and using design-based research, participatory design, all kinds of methodologies that are critical in that to make that happen. And for us, it's really important. We see AI prototypes that we developed co-evolve with the teacher pedagogical, didactical actions and behaviors. So there is not a one-shot solution that will come to the classroom and will fit. It's an ongoing evolving process that sort of takes place over time and iteratively improves itself. And I think that's one of the things that we should be much more aware of in these type of efforts, to make sure that we actually develop those solutions that will scale in education over time. That's it from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Inge. I have a quick question on the projects, perhaps, and how, can you give us an example of what actually the involvement of the teachers has actually changed, for example, in the reading a project, so what is it that you could have not done if you didn't have a teacher? Do you have an example to make it a bit tangible to people?
I think actually the first example was stressed out by the teachers, that especially the replacement of the testing procedure was super critical, but that they really wanted concurrent insights into that reading development of their children. So the exact dialogue between the developers and the teachers on what their needs were have been very, very important. So those focus groups and activities that we engage in to make sure that what is this exact question and what are the elements that really contribute to the success. And that's also why our concept phases are quite long. They're really 1 year, to make sure that everybody gets to voice their opinion. And really, we critically think in participatory design and focus groups to make sure that all those elements get integrated. And what also is important, what you see a lot with the technical developers, they tend to move forward to solutions that then also immediately provide practices for children, so practice and actually move towards intelligent tutoring systems, which in fact is often not the question from the teachers. The teachers actually want concurrent insight. They want to augment their current practices. They know how to teach. They're not asking you to teach. They're asking you to give them the insights that they cannot have. And I think that's a really important message. It doesn't have to be a full AI solution to be practical in the classroom. Oftentimes, when we think, oh, it's not even that exciting from an AI perspective, it's already very fundamental in the way that teachers are teaching, and it can really augment their practices. So I think that is a lesson that we see across many projects. Yep. Good information is essential.
Thank you so much. So let's move to Axel now to present, what something that has been developed, but from with the ministry in the driving seat.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm very pleased, and it's an honor for me to share information coming from France. So it will be close sometimes from what has just been presented by Inge. It's about AI innovation partnership for education. So the point for us was to answer the question how to accelerate innovation and how to disseminate digital services based on AI. But the main point is not to replace the teacher, is to assist him in order to teach and for the student to learn much better if possible. So as everyone know, and we hope that everyone do the same, we share a lot and we learn a lot from each other. So we learn in France from Digital Education Action Plan coming from Europe, from the publication coming from UNESCO and OECD too. In France, we've got a digital strategy for education, and we've got a national artificial intelligence strategy too. So we try to work with this different circle. So obviously, we've got issue about education, legal, ethical, technological, and economic. But the main thing is to work in a framework of trust based on ethical and scientific expectation, and always centered on teachers and students. That's the main point. So here is a quick sum up of the four main areas of our French digital strategy for education. And as you can read on the point 1 and 3, we are dealing with development of digital services shared between public and private sectors, and to define a framework, a common framework for all the stakeholders and the edtechs and the scientists and with the teachers. So what we did is very close to the Inge triangle, but like in a circle, we need to make work all together: school, edtech, so companies, and research laboratory. At the center, very center, the most important thing is that we work only for teacher and student. So we work for them and with them. Because as mentioned at the bottom of my slide, we've got some very, very difficult questions. Sometimes, let's be very simple, we can have some very, very clever idea in research laboratory, but you do not succeed or you do not manage to scale these good ideas for large scale experience, for example. On the other side, sometimes you've got some edtech very, very good at AI, but not that good at mathematics or French learning. So we need both of them in order to scale up the very good ideas coming from research laboratory. The edtech know how to do that, but the main point, it has to be forged, to be developed starting with the teacher, following with the teacher, and ending with the teacher. And obviously, everything has to be evidence-based. So we need to have an assessment, scientific assessment, all the way along. So it's the things that we do is that we've got a procurement, a procurement that can lead to this sharing point of view and to share the experience. So in France, we have developed technical doctrine for digital education, so that we can have the same languages with laboratories, companies, edtechs, and obviously with teachers. So the innovation partnership contract, it's procurement, a public procurement contract, which is very, very special. So our main focus was to assist and support teachers in different settings, learning through innovative digital services based on AI. And one very simple but very good idea, I think so, is that we do not try to have the last digital development. So it's all kind of AI, from the good old-fashioned AI, like an expert system, for example, to generative AI, but not only generative AI. And what we are seeking is to help teacher to process the most suitable content and offer personalized courses for more inclusive school, for example, for special needs, and to help teachers to form groups of pupils and to do that dynamically. So that's the main objective of an innovation partnership contract. And this kind of procurement has some specificities. The first thing is when you launch this kind of procurement, you cannot buy off-the-shelf solutions. So that means it cannot exist before you launch the contract. And the main objective is to stimulate innovation on the field of education and to lead some transformation with the digital technology under the control of the Ministry of Education. So in a few words, we've got some implementation of different successive phases. And the first one is the more critical and more interesting one, is an initial phase of research and development phase with volunteers teachers, because if they are not volunteers, they will not use the digital services. You will not have some data, so you will not perform with your AI system, and you will fail. So we only focus on volunteers teachers, volunteers lead teachers, and trainers of teachers, and local authorities to try this this initial R&D phase. Then we've got an industrial phase, because you can have a very, very good prototype and do not succeed to have an industrial digital services. So with the second phase is about digital industrialization. And the last phase is you buy the solution and the teacher can use it freely. At each end of phase, you can have a stop or go decision. So it's very good. And how do we decide to do a stop and go? Listening, hearing what the teacher are saying about what we are developing with them. And last specificity is that you can retain several partners in this kind of procurement, not only one, but 2 or 3 of them if you decide to follow on this way of management. So here is the main case steps, and I focus on step 2, 3, and 4. As you see, we work with public and private actors working all together, and with a centric user approach with the teacher for their students. So R&D phase is about 12 to 15 months, because we need a long time. We do some iteration. So we start with the first iteration of the prototype. Teachers just say, okay, this is good, this is bad, this is not useful for me, and this is the most valuable criteria. If a teacher just said, okay, it's useful for me, so it's a good criteria. It's not to have the Turing prize about AI technology, it's to have something useful for a teacher. So this lasts for 12 to 15 months. At the end of that, we just have all the feedback coming from local authorities or for the teachers, and we decide or not to follow with the digital company, with the lab researchers. And if we follow with them, we just send back to the companies and to the laboratories the way they need to improve what they saw before. Even if it was very good on the procurement at the very initial, coming from the feedbacks coming from the school, we just say, okay, change that, modify that, just do less but do better, to be very, very short. Then we've got the pre-industrialization phase, which is quite classical, but coming from a prototype to an industrial solution. So you need to be good at, for France and Europe, GDPR, to be much more inclusive, and et cetera, et cetera. And this is not that simple. Sometimes you've got some very good prototype that never succeed in going to scaling up this kind of solution. And at the end, acquisition. So it's quite this way is the classical one. And each year you can buy a different amount of license in front, a link to the real use you've got in classroom. So just to have a glimpse at what we have selected in France in the first innovation partnership we had, we had 3 digital services in mathematics. So they are on the left side, and you can see on the right side what come from the edtech and what come from research part, just to see that it's a very big team working all together, with the best coming from laboratories and the best coming from the one who know how to do things for real. And as you can see, perhaps you know some of the laboratory like INRIA or Sorbonne University or WIMIX, or well, just to see that you need to be a team in order to succeed to do something very complex to answer the needs of teachers in a country. I will not read everything, but this is a short a sum up from each of the digital services we have done. So we had 2 in French, because one of them, at the very beginning, we had to select 3 in French and 3 in mathematics, but one of them was good enough in order to be kept by the French ministry. So we have 2 digital services in French. We have 3 digital services in mathematics, and it's for K1 to K3 level. So we are working with fluency, with calculus, solving problem, etc., etc. So now the next step for the ministry, we have learned a lot from this first innovation partnership. There is one innovation partnership which is in our classroom. We are working at this time in one innovation partnership currently being examined. And for example, at the first innovation partnership, we had about 20 teams of company and laboratory answering the needs of the ministry. At this time, we have more than 50 teams that have answered to the needs of the ministry. And the next step, we are working on a new innovation partnership that will be launched this school year. And the main point for us is not about dealing with French or math or foreign languages. It will be an innovation partnership about supporting teacher professional activities and need with AI services. For example, how to differentiate much more, whatever the discipline, and to help to assess or to examine the copy, the production, the one that the student do. So it will be a professional about the professional needs of the teacher based on AI. And it's very important, and I will end with that we do not consider only generative AI. Generative AI has a huge potential for sure, but we really want to have a mix of AI, and the main point for us is to be useful for a teacher. Thank you for your attention, and obviously I can discuss with you later on.
Thank you, Axel. Thank you so much for this presentation. I have a quick follow-up question on the role of the teachers. So someone asked to clarify if they are actually involved at the very beginning of the project to define what the projects are. And also I have one on how you go from how the translation from the volunteers to the regular teachers has been working so far. Can you say us a few words, short words about that?
Yeah.
We go to Donatella.
Yes, thank you very much, Stefan. The point is that the local authority of teachers are involved even when we select the candidate. And then when we start the research and development phase, we ask who in France want to work with us to test for real some prototype and to define and to help them be much better before we decide or not to distribute this kind of digital service for all the teachers of the country. So we had a lot of volunteers about that, because doing this kind of work, you learn a lot about what AI digital service can do, and what should AI digital service should do, and it's not the same answer. It's not the same point. So teachers doing this kind of work are learning a lot about the potentiality of AI. So we had a lot of volunteers, really a lot of volunteers coming from all over France, which is very, very important, because when we are working with, for example, natural language, we need to have all different pronunciation coming from different parts of France. And that's very, very important. It does not have to be only the accent coming from Paris if you want to have a useful application for learning. So we had a lot of volunteers, and the point is that when the work is ended and we said, okay, now we have finished the work, you can use it. The teacher just they can decide freely. They use it or they do not want to use it when the ministry and the academy and the volunteers at the beginning and the researchers have ended the work. So it's only we select the best, we forge them with real teacher, and then we said, okay, if you want, you can use it, but they just decide if they want to use it. And as we have the experience of the first one, we have a lot of user, so it's quite good. We think it's quite good. That's why we have launched some new innovation partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So now let's move to Donatella Solda at Future Education Modena, which is a foundation. I understand
it is. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to the speakers previously. The presentation were very interesting. I'm about to share a model of co-design and validation of several methodologies and technologies that we are running since a few years in our R&D center. Just a little background on what we do and how we got to our approach. We founded our own place. It's an R&D center funded by a bank, by a foundation. It's a social impact, mainly a social impact model. We collaborate with several universities and innovation centers all around Europe and the world, but we have a strong link with basically all the universities in Italy and several others around the world to get to a point. Together with my co-founder, Damien, we worked a few years at the Ministry of Education, and we realized that there was something missing in what we were doing. We didn't have the opportunity to actually run from the ministry what we are doing now through through our center. We are in a city in the north of Italy now, in something that will become a very big digital humanities hub. We are actually under a renovation right now. That's why you are seeing me from a different angle, because the light went off just a few minutes before I was about to speak. But the thing is that we came up to this approach after a few years being researchers. I am an IT lawyer, and after a few years at the policy level, we designed innovation policies in Italy, and we got in relation with all the systems, educational systems, while we were in that position. We realized that there was a strong need to iterate between research, learning, and production. We call it learning design, in order to have solutions, technologies, and solutions that are both consistent with what the education needs and with what the state-of-the-art technology can offer. So we came up with not only a production model, if you want to call it this way, that is a cycle of activities, actions that we run before we call an experience, before we come with an outcome. That is based on research and interaction with recipients, mainly teachers, but most of the times students have an active role in all the process. I will share a few examples of what we do with having in mind that we also made it clear for participants to our activities that we do believe that there's a need to for learning environments to choose technology intentionally and not to be just end users. So one of the values, the main values that we support in embracing technology is that it's for relevant and impactful and scalable technologies. To do so, it's necessary to have to involve and map the actual needs of learning environments before choosing technologies and before drafting and designing the actual innovation that you will then present in those learning spaces. I will make a showcase of what we did, for instance, in the last years. This is something that we did together with a few dozens of schools and teachers and students to embed the principles of service design into learning design. We know that learning is rooted in cognitive sciences, but we know that there are other branches that could bring value by, for instance, taking into account the needs of students that design would call users, but the actual needs of recipients of the learning activity. And so what we did, we are actually doing it, crafting together with teachers and students some formats and templates that would align the production of materials and the characteristics, the details of the learning interaction, taking into account the principles of service design. We know that game-based learning is something that is more and more in use in learning environments. So what we do with our schools, with our students and teachers, is first of all giving some framing game-based learning, giving them the knowledge base, the principles on how gaming, serious games, gamification, and game-based learning work, to then solve some actual needs. This is an example that schools that represents the fact that innovation can solve actual needs and needs to be the solution needs to be co-designed. Each system has some old literature, some old texts written with different languages that pupils maybe struggle with. In this case, it was Divina Commedia from Dante. So teachers came to us saying that it was very difficult for them to grasp attention of students. And we designed together with teachers a way of representing the outcome of learning of those texts through a video game, through Minecraft in this case. So what could before be just a simple how do you say it? Riassunto, some smaller text, I mean a paraphrases of the text from a different language. It became a video that students would then present to the teacher to list all the necessary goals, skills goals that the teacher set for the class. So metaphors, allegoric figures, whatever was supposed to be at the core of a traditional interaction became an output to be represented through a video game. And what we did together with teachers was to embed what they would do normally in a normal interaction in a video game together with teachers. So to reassure them that students wouldn't only play in Minecraft, but they would actually achieve the skills that teachers were seeking. We did the same in a topic that is all around us. It's about sustainability. It's about especially fighting and preventing anxiety from climate change. Teachers came to us saying that to just list all the tragic developments of climate change would provoke, and even from a scientific, even only doing it from a scientific point of view, would provoke some anxiety in their students. So what we did has been to design some paths, some learning methodologies that would involve the active role of students in imagining their buildings, the environments around them, after having the deep knowledge, technical deep knowledge of the impact of certain technologies in the reality, on climate change. A very few other examples. We did the same with data science, with career guidance. We are doing the same with a tool for that uses generative AI to design contents, and so on. The outcome, yes, the outcome of what we do is always centered on the needs of teachers, involving them in a peer-to-peer relationship. So we found that it's pivotal for teachers to being able not only to collaborate and validate the technologies, but also to, of course, exchange their thoughts with colleagues.
Thank you, Donatella. One quick question, and actually that's a question that I'm then going to extend to the whole panel, and it's about the role of students. We've heard from Inge and Axel, mainly solutions that were for teachers, and someone rightly asked, and what about the students? Actually, I should remind that we had in our first Digital Education Outlook something about a chapter by Judith Good on special education needs, and where the end users were really actually the student in that particular case. So what, Donatella, in your case, there seemed to be a stronger role sometimes of the students in the design, but perhaps Axel and Inge want also to come back on that point, and what...
I may elaborate just a little bit further on the role of students. So we do propose innovations or environments where technology is maybe more advanced. And so what we decided together with teachers was to have students cover certain aspects of the technological needs of the interaction. So, for instance, in the classics of Minecraft, students would be the manager of the digital experience, and they would relate to the teachers on touch points, on goals. And teachers would maintain their role of setting the learning goals and giving, controlling timing and managing the whole experience. But students would become responsible of something that teachers otherwise wouldn't be in the position of doing it. They are not as proficient as students in managing Minecraft. So not only we had to create a trust relationship, a confidence on both sides that they could trust each other's, but teachers recognize that students were at the center of the learning experience.
Thank you. So Axel and Inge, very shortly on that, we have thousands of questions. We are not going to be able to address them. And thank you for answering directly in the chat. That's very helpful. On students, Axel, go first.
Okay, thanks. So as I mentioned very fastly before, we were with students from K1 to K3. So they were very young. So the point is that we know that everything is centered about, and we trust our teacher, and they decide what is good for them at this kind of ages. Obviously, if we are dealing with students much more older, then we will ask them. But when they are very young, the one we need to consider first is the teacher, because we know that the specialist of teaching is the teacher. So no doubt about that. It's not teaching with a teacher. It's always teaching with teacher, assisted by AI-based digital services.
Thank you. Inge?
Yeah, I totally agree with Axel and also with Donatello. I'm super happy to see so many overlap between the initiatives that's been presented here. Really making sure that teacher voices and student voices are being heard. In No Lie, we have, in some cases, also student focus groups when we're developing in the concept phase. So, for instance, the SRL project, where we stimulate students' self-regulated learning. These are secondary school students. So when we did a concept phase, we, next to the teacher focus groups, also had focus groups with students co-designing the solutions that were then put into place. And for instance, our generative AI project, where we're really focusing on what teachers and students are currently already doing with generative AI, there we also really have a nice contrast, because actually students are far more advanced often in using generative AI in different purposes versus what teachers do. So also in that perspective, it's very interesting to take both perspectives in the design phase.
Thank you. So I'm going to raise or ask 5 different questions, and then you can pick the one that you want, and elaborate, because to manage time. So one is, can we see the involvement of the teachers as a form of professional learning for them? And do we have evidence that it is the case in your cases? So because someone pointed the actually difficulties to ramp up the digital competencies of teachers in some cases. So do you see this as a possible way to do that? Second question is basically who pays for that, and will, at the end of the day, the whatever is developed be acquired by the government and be made available for free to the different education systems? So what is usually speaking, how does it go about that? Third question about the composition of the teams that are necessary for that. So what are the different types of competencies that are needed to make this work? And what is the role of the coordinators when there are some, in the different teams to make it work? And last question, and so you have really a good choice portfolio of things that you can talk about. It's about the evaluation, and especially the evaluation of perhaps the learning outcomes. Perhaps it can be some other things like, the teacher competencies or the well-being or engagement or whatever. So do you do that, and how do you do it if it is the case? So who wants to start? Axel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I can start with the price. Very important question, obviously. The teacher do not pay anything because the state pay everything. So the innovation partnership, it's a public procurement. We pay the company and the laboratory to develop something that has obviously a cost, a great cost. And the teacher can use it freely because they are teacher in France. So they can use it. They do not have to. They can decide to use it, but it's freely for them because the state pay for that. It's very important because it's a question of equity, equality. So we do not have to consider difference of power about money in the schools. So everyone can use the digital services because it's coming from the French Ministry of Education. So that's the main point. And it's so important because there was a question about special needs students. Every digital services we did, because of the phase industrialization, they had to be clever and good enough in order to address special needs students. So that point is a cost. This is not that expensive to be a much more inclusive school because we know that we start from very, very low at this point. And that's all for me. I think it's the main point for me.
And just to add a point, because someone asked about whether the solution can be considered to be subsidized, I assume that it follows the competition laws in France, and so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a procurement. It's a public procurement. So yeah.
Thank you, Inge.
Thank you. I'd like to touch on the point of teacher professionalization. And I think really it's a two-way street. So what we see, teachers being involved in co-creation projects are actually engaged in the development of AI in a much more profound manner than they would typically be engaged. And I think that's a very high value, both for the professionalization of their own activities, but also for others not being that involved, because it also allows us to really see how that pedagogical didactical behavior of teachers is changing in co-collision with the AI, and how that together evolves into this new orchestration within the classroom. And that is what we need to learn in order to support professionalization of a wider group of teachers. So I think in that sense, it's sort of like a two-step process, with those being involved, getting that additional benefit, putting in that additional effort, and then being able to transfer that across to the profession at large. And then our teachers in residence is just a fantastic system. We see teachers coming into the lab, working with us on the innovation, working with us in the scientific teams. And that has an added value both for the scientific teams, for the companies, as well as for the teachers and schools being involved. So I think in that sense, that model is very interesting.
Thank you. Donatella?
Well, I think that it's a
We've lost you, Donatella. So perhaps while you know, we will, when she comes back, we will ask her to get back to it. But perhaps I have one final provocative question, perhaps for you. You know, playing devil's advocate or something like that, and perhaps I would say, is there not a risk in the system that we actually get stuck into the current teaching and learning practices? Because, you know, if we are starting from the needs of the current teachers, you know, so how do we actually transform, you know, the way that we do things? And so perhaps another way to ask the question is there still a role for some kind of more top-down ways of doing things? And, you know, how do you see the two complementing each other? Inge.
I'll be happy to jump in on this, Stefan. I think by starting in the current situation actually gives us the amplifier effect. So we actually can, together with the teachers, find what are the ways to transform. And in the 10 years that we've been doing this, we've seen that often bringing technology to the classroom plays out completely different than what you designed for to start with. And it actually shows us what it can do and how it can be transformative in the long run. So I think actually starting out at the teacher space is giving us an advantage for transitions and transformative use of AI in education. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Axel.
Yeah, in a few words, you know, everyone heard about AI, but not that much people test AI for real in their daily. So when they test teachers, they learn a lot. Even if they decide not to use it in classroom later on, they have learned a lot because they have learned about the digital services and they have met the ones thinking about the digital services, the searchers, the edtech companies, the team. So they learn a lot and they consider the point very differently when they have tested. At the very beginning, we thought we had only some hundreds of volunteers teachers, and it was not the point. So there were much more volunteers than the ministry expected. And let's say it simply, teachers are much more available in order to learn and transform things that ministry do sometimes. So they want to discover some new things, and there were really a lot in order to test, and there were a lot to stay in the innovation partnership using it when it was ended.
Thank you, Axel. Donatella, welcome back. You have the floor.
Sorry, apologies. I mean,
No
it's a bad timing here with the renovation works. My take is that the collaboration between all sides, research, production, tech ecosystem, so technological advancement needs to speak a lot with the teachers and students in order to be relevant and scalable.
Thank you so much. So thank you to the three of you for a wonderful webinar, which will be available, you know, on the Edu channel. And so thank you so much. I think that we probably have convinced many people that co-creation is important, works, and actually can lead to good products and tools that will be used and will contribute actually to the adoption of AI and other digital tools in education. So thank you so much for exemplifying how it can be done in practice. You know, people know where you are. So, you know, if you want to do something like that in your country, you can reach out to, you know, Inge, Axel, or Donatella, you know, depending perhaps of what type of actors you are. And of course, you can always reach out to the OECD to support you. We're here for that. And we are going to have more of those webinars and expect to see you there. So have a great day, evening, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you so much to all.
Thank you. Bye.